All right, welcome back to the Perfect Season podcast. It's one of your hosts, Antonio, and we're joined today with Bobby and James. This is a different episode, more college football news, college football coaching carousel, maybe some potential transfer news. But we're talking about USF today, their new head coach, named to be this Sunday, hopefully, and then their last season outlook, and then what to expect for next season. But first, we're going to introduce each other. I'll start with Bobby.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm Bobby Wilson. I am the host, creator of the TNT College Football Podcast. Uh, my basis for my show, I focus on a lot of national news, but of course I'm a fan of. I try to be a fan of everybody, but I'm human. I'm a fan of teams. Still, I focus on traveling to every FBS stadium. That's part of my goal. This coming Saturday, I'll be at the MAC championship. So a lot of weekends I'm at a new venue.
Yeah.
But like you said, for this show, I'm excited to talk about USF.
Hi. I'm James. I run the Sidelines-USF account. Um, and yeah, I mean, excited. Thanks for having me on
You're welcome.
this evening. Yeah, for sure. And then definitely Bobby. Always enjoy reading your you did the whole, not only you traveling, but you did the whole, you literally previewed every single team before the season started. So props to you. So appreciate you guys having me on for sure.
All right,
Well, thank you,
so
James.
if we're just gonna get right into this, it's clear as day USF finished 1-11 this past season. The one win coming against Howard. I was at that game. Me personally, I did see a lot of struggling that game, but they at least got the win. Didn't have to finish 0-12, but going from losing Gary Bohannon to Catravius Marsh to now Byron Brown, and now you're getting all these players leaving for the transfer portal. What do you expect going into next season as a takeaway from this season going into next season? Do you expect Byram to be good? Do you see the same mojo, or do you see some people transferring to USF?
Well, I mean, I can start off if we start off in the
Yeah.
season. I just looking back, I mean, it was kind of foreshadowing. So, we're hyped up for the BYU game,
Yeah.
and um, we're about to kick off in the distance. We got a lightning bolt, and now we didn't kick off for another 2 hours. It
That
poured.
was
It was just kind of, I guess it was just kind of foreshadowing on the
yeah.
season. We come out, players are hyped up. And I mean, we're talking about the first play of the game. BYU throws a little screen pass, and
Yeah.
it's for a touchdown. So, that was the first start. And, going into the season, I didn't have, conference championship expectations. I did have, 5 to 6 wins.
That's what I was expecting also.
When you got, Gary Bohannon, and the offense had the weapons, and I think
Hmm.
they finished the season in the 50th range in S&P in offense, but obviously our defense was pretty much dead last.
Yeah.
Um, but going through the season, yeah, it was struggle. They had struggles even in that first game. They had struggles getting the plays down from to the sidelines. It was a mess the first game, and um, the season they struggled against Howard in the first half.
They
Um,
did struggle. Like,
yeah,
that's one thing I do take away from looking at this team. They struggled against Howard, which is a team they should have blew the doors off of. But yet, if you look later on in the year, they play well against Cincinnati. They played for the second half well against Central Florida.
hmm
They play well against harder opponents, but I'm tired of hearing the same old moral victories. It's time for them to actually get that victory Sunday. And I
yeah.
think
I was just gonna say there is chances. The season could have gone different in the for Jeff Scott if that field goal against Florida, if it wasn't bobbled, and we
yeah,
actually made the field goal and sent it overtime. And
I was there for also that game too.
yeah, and if we pulled off Cincinnati and
If we
things
pulled
could have
off,
gone different, but it just seemed like I said, starting from BYU, it was just foreshadowing, and um, I could go into whole details with recruiting with under Jeff Scott, and he kind of put all his marbles in to the transfer portal, and I would have liked to seen a little more high school development.
yeah.
But I don't know. But Bobby, you're kind of on the outside, looking in and things like that. So you kind of have a little different perspective, I guess you can say.
I think the number one takeaway that especially from the beginning of the year, you kind of hit on it, James, was I have a coaching background. I'm a former head coach at the college level, albeit in a different sport, but still I understand coaching. And there was just a complete disconnect between the coaching staff, it seemed to
I
me.
agree.
Like you were saying, James, from the play calling, things not getting in. There's just like little things that shouldn't be an issue for Division I coaching staffs that were
Right.
major issues for USF.
It was disappointing too because there was so much build up to that game,
Yes.
and it was just what were we doing, spring, summer, what, I know we had Trickett was a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Yeah, there's some hiccups, but those are minor things that you should be able to get those calls down. And they even talked about, they admitted that they had a hard time in the game one.
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, it was also game one of the season, so there was a lot of butterflies in your system. Third year head coach Jeff Scott, formerly. I was all in for Jeff Scott. I thought this was going to be his year where you get 6 wins, bowl eligible. Prove them wrong because it was technically his first real year as a head coach. Because
mhm.
first year was COVID year, and then you had last year, and now this year. But you're 4-26 out of that whole 3 year span. It's not going to cut it at this level. I feel like he's better off being an offensive coordinator back at Clemson. And going into that, we're going to get into the next head coaching debate about either, we've been hearing all over Twitter lately, Deion Sanders or Jamie Chadwell. I think everyone at USF is wanting Deion. Me personally, I've been saying Deion since the beginning because I think Dion, what he brings to the table, former player in the NFL, turned Jackson State around, and now he has the potential to turn either USF or Colorado around. Cincinnati's already a top 25 team, but I think he comes to the USF. He comes to USF as a good coach, turns his program around, brings in his son. He also remember he flipped the 5-star recruit from FSU to go to Jackson State, and he still has 2 years eligibility left. So,
Yeah, I guess that there's, yeah. I mean, if you have a chance to get prime, it's going to change just the total trajectory of the program for sure. There's a lot of I don't know who you can believe. There's a lot of talk out there. One media person in Tampa tweeted that there was a 90% deal, and then the next day he
JP
started
Peterson,
backtracking. He started
Yeah.
backtracking a lot on that comment. So yeah, if Michael Kelly can bring in Deion Sanders to USF,
I
that is a
mean, think
home
about it
out of
like
this
this.
world.
Think about it like this. I was reading something saying, oh, if USF somehow secures the bag with Deion Sanders, you could get a next potential college game day visit. You got Deion. Remember, we do have Alabama on the schedule coming up. There's a lot of good things that happen when you bring Deion into the schedule and this whole system. He does want full control of the facilities. I think that's a given. You have to give him that. Give him full control. He also does want a say on how the construction will work for the on-campus stadium. So he wants to change his program, and I've been watching a lot of his interviews and how he treats his players and his off the field and in the field interactions and what he does for these players. He's gonna be a good coach wherever he goes, and he's gonna turn that program around, I believe. Doesn't matter if it's Tampa, it doesn't matter if it's Colorado or Cincinnati. You're going to bring in great recruits. And if it's in Tampa, you still get to compete with Florida State, Florida, Miami for recruits, and Central Florida. So I believe wherever he goes, he's going to make this another program great again, and his son will follow his footsteps.
I personally think if Coach Prime ends up at USF, I've said this, and I know I've had many conversations with you, James, about this. if if he in fact ends up at USF, I think the floodgates open when it comes to the potential that he is going to have. That he'll be able to basically get any recruit in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
I think it's very apparent that will happen. I think Florida State, Miami, UCF, they all have to be really worried about that. But
Because
at
if
the
you
same
get,
time, there's a lot that comes with him being the head coach too,
yeah,
from the outside.
there's a lot of, oh, there's going to be a lot of what ifs. Can he change his program around? There's going to be, what if he fails? Like, what if he fails his program? Is it going to be proven that was Dion just a good coach at Jackson State, or is he a good coach elsewhere? It's like one of those things where it's like I had this debate about the NFL. Is Russell Wilson really a good quarterback, or is he just having a really bad year? Like I have that debate with some of my other people on the podcast, but it's like one of those questions you don't know what you're going to get into if you bring Dion in, but he can flip any recruit. But there's also the other head coach, Jamie Chadwell from Coastal, which I'm still reading more about, and I'm getting iffy about him. But he was offered a big contract with Liberty.
Well, I mean, going back to Dion, I think one thing that that I guess probably might, especially Michael Kelly, he's gonna have to be willing to probably, give up some things that maybe he had control before.
Yeah.
If you bring in Deion Sanders, just in things I've seen with him at Jackson State, the way that he's going to travel to, I think I could be totally wrong, but I think he may want some control of some maybe media rights.
Yeah.
I think he has a little production crew that he goes with, and that may could be some hiccup. I don't know. And so it's you're bringing in a kind of a different system that you're used to, and I think people may have to be willing to give up some
You have to
power, I guess,
you have
for greater good.
you have to give something to get something, basically.
You do, and but as I was saying earlier, if Dion goes to Colorado or someplace else, and Chadwell goes to Liberty, there's other people. Larry Scott, the current coach at Howard, he was an original recruit from Jim Levitt. He played on the original team. He coached under Levitt for quite some time. And he was, tight end coach at Florida, recruiting coordinator. He worked at Tennessee. He was the interim coach at Miami. And he's starting to turn around Howard. Howard's not the easiest place to recruit. But
No,
Larry Scott. And I think people are, concerned, oh, he's, we need a Division I, we need a splash hire, which I get, but Deanne may not come here. But that a Larry Scott or a Willie Simmons at FAMU are definitely two coaches that should be considered because uh, they've proven it, and I think they could do well in at USF.
no, don't get me wrong. Like I like those coaches too. I like the FAMU coach, and I haven't heard much about the Howard head coach, but things I've heard from like FAMU, I forgot it. I'm not good with names. I'll tell you that point blank. But I've heard like he's had some off the field issues, and if I'm looking at my next head coach for USF, I'm wanting to bring someone in that is determined for this program, not someone who's going to be here maybe like 3, 4 years and then he wins a couple ball games, like 6 games, takes some bowling, and then leaves. If Dion's here, I think Dion's going to be the coach for a really long time of this program, rebuild it, and hopefully get his team back into a top 25 matchup. That's how
Uh,
I'm looking for USF. That's how I'm looking at it because like I look at like other coaches like Dabo Sweeney, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban. Look at how they've turned their programs around. It all takes time, and I feel like there hasn't been that one set in stone guy at USF where it's just not enough time for him to turn this program really around.
I definitely think if Coach Prime takes a job, he's going to get that opportunity. I mean,
Yeah,
you're not going to fire Coach Prime after a couple years.
no,
No.
but
Plus,
there's been other
plus,
things.
I think that the other two guys mentioned are fantastic candidates. I'm a huge supporter of Willie Simmons. I think he's a fantastic coach, and I think he's a fantastic leader of men.
Hmm.
And I think he would do an unbelievable job at USF.
Hmm. And I know someone dug up something, and I don't want to get in, controversy or anything. I was, 20 some odd years ago. From what I understand, there was no charges filed. Not saying that it didn't happen, not saying that
Yeah,
it's okay. I'm not saying any of that. But I'm also a believer that people change, people deserve second chances. He's been at several programs since then. Um, but everything that I have read, there's like two articles about the incident, and there was nothing, nothing else. Um, but yeah, that could be a 100% a red flag for sure. But I would have a hard time believing that FAMU is going to put themselves in a position that would hurt their image.
yeah.
But you know, he would. I think he would be a great coach. I think he could recruit the kids in Florida very well. I think Larry Scott would recruit kids in Florida very well. I don't know how much of a connect. I know Chadwell runs an amazing offense. He would probably do really well with Bohannon if he's starting, or if Brian Brown's going to start with Brian Battie at running back. Um, I don't know his connections to Florida per se.
There's also been other head coaches that haven't really been talked about when they first fired Jeff Scott. I remember I was reading, is it a possibility you bring Jim Levitt back? Would Jim Levitt be an option back into coaching? I've heard Dan Mullen, but Dan Mullen's also rumored to be South Carolina's offensive coordinator. I've heard I've heard all these other names. But me personally, I feel like a higher name head coach of the Power Five program, either SEC, ACC, a proven coach that can win, who has previous experience, is good for USF because he brings the experience, he brings the leadership. Like that's what I look for into a coach for USF. But I also had a conversation with Michael Kelly because I work for Vinnick Sports Group, so I'll be working the USF games and Lightning games. I asked him like if he's looking at. He said there's a couple candidates they're looking at that they want to bring in. Of course, he couldn't tell me who because you can't say who. But I remember for the longest time, everyone was talking about Scott Frost. And now, yes, he won a self proclaimed national championship at Central Florida, but he went to Nebraska, goes to Nebraska, has one good year. You were 16 for 27, 16 wins, 27 losses. I remember everyone wanted to bring him in. I was not a fan of Scott Frost. I don't think he's proven. And everyone at USF was saying, bring him in, bring him in. He's the future. Yeah, he did well at Central, but I don't know how he would do here.
If we go back to Jamie Chadwell, I have a ton of connections at Coastal Carolina, and I will tell you that he's pretty much leaning to Liberty.
Jamie
Um,
Chadwell?
yeah, just point blank,
Yeah.
being honest up front with that. So I would personally say that he's probably out of the equation,
Yeah.
honestly. Um,
And like there were things about Chadwell that I was reading that I'm thinking he looks like a really good coach, a good hire. He could be like one of those hey needle in a haystack type hires wherever he goes. At first I didn't like him because he was a lower level team. But after I did some reading, I started growing and seeing how he interacts with his players, seeing how he interacts with the fans and the media. and how he's turned the program around. And there's possibility he's actually going to be a good coach wherever he goes.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a fantastic coach. He's what he's done at Coastal is
Yeah.
pretty amazing. I mean, you guys have talked about the offense is unbelievable. I mean, he's a heck of a recruiter, but at the same time, like I said, I think he's pretty much out of the equation when it comes to USF.
Yeah, because I saw the tweet from somewhere and said Jamie Chadwell, someone offered him a really big like chunk of money, and
Yeah.
everyone's looking at the money situation right now. So he's most likely going to go to Liberty. And if you're saying he's going to Liberty, now what are the odds USF lands Dion?
In my personal opinion, I think that's where I would lean, just because I think it's been so quiet and so hush hush, like James
Yeah,
was saying. I feel like with it being so quiet, that in my opinion leans towards Coach Prime,
because
just because.
everyone's talking, oh, Dion wants to go to Liberty. Dion wants to go to Cincinnati because it's a bigger name school. You're in a bigger conference. But think about it like this. No one really talks about USF. So if you're thinking about it and USF's willing to give him the money and I don't know, you'll probably have no more than I do. Boosters are giving more money in, which is what I've been hearing. I don't know which booster or whatever. Y'all probably know more than I do. Boosters are giving more money in. No one's really talking USF. I think he ends up in USF in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, there's he can do. His son, has that NIL deal with Tom Brady.
So that's
Uh, that's
when
that's pretty cool and pretty. It's a key component. I would say. The media market here in Tampa is bigger.
it's the
He,
11th biggest media.
yeah, he when when uh when USF is winning, and they get ranked. Tampa's kind of little. It's a fickle town. So if the team is winning, people out of the woodworks are going to start to show up. People that haven't cheered for USF
In a
in
long time.
years, that people are going to come out the woodworks. And I know if I have no doubt that he would turn the program around. I would say in year one, he's gonna. It would be astonishing if he doesn't get to a bowl game
Yeah.
with simple commitments that he would flip from other schools, the portal and whatever kids would come with them. Um, it would be a quick fix. It wouldn't be that. I know some fans are saying that, oh, I want a coach to stay, and we're not just going to do a quick, he's going to do well for a couple years and then move on. Unfortunately, Prime, he may have found out that other schools want him to come to a school like USF, besides Colorado, but they're low, it's low Pac-12.
Yeah.
They want him to show before he's going to get a job at whatever big Power Five school, and USF would be a great location for him to do that.
I agree with 100% with what you're saying. And I was also, if we're going to dive into our next subject of next year's schedule with our non-conference opponents, you got Western Kentucky, you got FAMU. Now the game that everyone probably has circled that's probably going to sell out Ray J is Alabama. And now if you get Dion into USF and you flip these recruits and you get Dion into USF, you got Bama. That could possibly be a college game day episode itself because you got Bama, and Bama has Nick Saban. Yeah, USF most likely is going to lose because it's Alabama, but you never know what could happen. But just think about that storyline leading up into the season. Deion Sanders versus Nick Saban, two of the greatest coaches of all time. But that would be a great matchup in my opinion. And then you also go to UConn, who is bowl eligible this year.
That's the one I have circled, but for other reasons. James knows I work very closely with the University of Connecticut, and I write a lot. I right, for UConn rivals. I work a lot with the UConn players and
Yeah.
coaches and everything.
We
So
need to hook up for. I need to make the trip up the stores next because
that, that
it's at UConn. We need to meet up.
Yeah.
yes, yep.
Unfortunately, I'll be going to Appalachian State, so I won't be able to make any of these USF games, but I'm gonna try my hardest to make some of these games.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Alabama game, if Coach Prime is hired, becomes must see TV. I mean,
Oh,
it's made for TV.
yeah. It's like
Well,
grab your popcorn, grab your drinks, you get ready to watch a movie, basically.
yeah, I mean, depending on what he can bring in the off, if he is hired, you could potentially have Western Kentucky's they're good.
They're they're one of those teams where you're good, you're not good. They're a roller coaster team. They're
Yeah,
just like the lower level bottom 25. They're like a South Carolina.
after this season, I can't count any team just the way our current state. I can't count any team
Yeah.
as a win like I could before. But if depending on who he brings in or whatever, you maybe beat Western Kentucky, you beat FAMU, so
That's
you got a 2-0 USF, 2-0 Alabama. That Tampa would be it would be an exciting time for that game, but um, I don't know. Like I think Bobby, you talked about it. It's very tight-lipped, the whole situation. It's weird. It's weird that there hasn't been any leaks. Before any type of search, there would always be some leaks in the Leroy Selman Center. So I think Michael Kelly cleaned that up in
yeah.
his tenure. But um, it's if I worry that if it's not Dion, I worry two things. So first, if it's not Dion, whoever that coach is, I feel bad for him because this fan base kind of has one guy that they want, and if it's not him, this fan base is going to be extremely disappointed. But I think just as there's other candidates that may not be that splash higher, but could do just as well in recruiting and things.
Now, if you're saying about these splash hires, you have everyone. I'm pretty sure is circled in on everyone's circled in on Deion Sanders.
Mm.
That's who everyone wants. They want Dion, but if Jamie Chadwell goes to Liberty, that's probably he goes there. That's his best bet. But if they don't get Dion, is there another splash hire you see that could be in USF?
I don't think
Like,
it's a splash hire from a name perspective. I think Willie Simmons is a tremendous hire. I really do. I think what he brings to the table as a coach, as a man, and how he's going to mentor those guys,
yeah,
and how he's going to be able to recruit the state of Florida, particularly, I think is going to do wonders. And he's gonna. I feel he's going to do it the right way. He's going to start from high school, the ground up, and work from
hmm
there. Which James, you were saying too, like that's what USF really needs. I mean, yes, you can find guys in the portal. You're always going to have to find guys in the portal. That's the
yeah,
way it works now.
Mm.
But you really need to build those relationships with the local, especially. I mean, Tampa is loaded with talent. You have to
yeah.
build the connections with that local high school coaching base.
And what I've noticed lately about USF's recruits, they are looking at the transfer portal, but they're also looking at JUCO players going into D1. And when you look at JUCO into D1, yeah, they have that experience. It's just some of these players are already playing 2 years prior to D1 experience. And now this is probably going to be our last question. Does the transfer portal hurt players or teams? Does it hurt like their fan base, and does it hurt their chances of playing better schools, or does it just hurt your team in general because it's next man up mentality?
I'll speak as a former coach on this. I'm glad I'm not coaching anymore because of the transfer portal, because it has to make it really, really hard to build your culture within your program. But at the same time, I mean, I completely understand why it's there. It it has good intentions, just
Yeah.
like NIL has good intentions as well. It's one of those things where it when used correctly and used in the right situation, it's great. Now, you shouldn't be building your entire team or the majority of your team from the transfer portal, though.
And I was gonna say a player. I'll use this example, Timmy McLean.
You,
So a player that I would say people could disagree, agree, whatever, that used the portal the entirely wrong way is he left. He got, I don't know if his dad is a very active on Twitter and he's very
yeah.
vocal. Um, but he left once Bohannon got the nod. If he just would have stayed, he would have been the starter for the rest of the season at USF. And he
And
would not be, he's literally looking at the fourth string QB at the team up the road, and he may never play
in
quarterback there.
yeah, because if we're gonna refer to them as the team up the road that we very much don't like, that is not national champions, and that was not a touchdown that last play of the game. I don't know if y'all were there at the game, but
Yeah.
that I was already having a bad day after Clemson's lost. But I watched that like 10 times. His foot was out of bounds. His foot was way out of bounds, and that was not a touchdown. USF should have won that game.
Are you talking about the touchdown,
The Central
in the
Florida
corner?
touchdown.
Yeah.
Because if we rewind it numerous amounts of times, his foot's out of bounds. But
It was close. It was bang bang. It was very close. It. I would go back to the that not that touchdown, but the couple passes before where it was a long pass, but it
yeah,
looked like he trapped it. And they reviewed that and they called that a catch. And to go on your point, and Bobby, we were talking I was sitting in the stadium. Bobby, we were talking too, and yeah, it was a roller coaster emotion. I was getting Dippin' Dots with my son, and all craziness broke loose, and it was crazy. But that's just a USF situation right there where
yeah.
we take the lead and then we lose it. But it was Bobby and I were talking about you're a Detroit Lion fan, so you know about that too.
That's
Yes.
Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I'm a diehard Bucks and Raider fan since the beginning. No bandwagon affiliation. So it's a story for another day, but I was at the Raider Jags game and I saw them choke that 20-0 lead away and they just raided that situation up. So I know exactly how these situations work. And my best friend's a Falcons fan, and
Mhm.
every chance I get, I always hang that 28-3 lead on him because it's just funny. But we just joke around a lot about that. But thinking about USF, they just know the USF situation's up. But
And I wanted Bobby was talking about the key thing that did Jeff Scott in is a key thing that he said, Bobby. He said you can't build your team through the portal,
right,
and I think Jeff just got away with that. If you see in some of my tweets, I'll say a couple. I say these numbers all the time: 813-727-352-863 and 941. 5 area codes. Literally get in a vehicle, drive to those 5 counties around Tampa, and you can build a championship team. But I'm not talking about 4 and 5 star. We don't have to have 4 and 5 star
no.
players. Go and find those hungry 3 star players, develop
Sometimes
them,
they're diamond in the roughs.
and you're gonna win this conference.
But most
Mhm.
likely, thank you so much for being on this episode. It's a
Yeah,
pleasure doing this USF talk. Man, once again, you'll hear it from me very much so. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know a comment if you disagree with us. If you don't disagree, let us know your opinion. Who do you want at USF for head coach? Is it someone we hired? Is it someone they've talked about not hire? Just let us know. And we'll be back with our NFL episode. Me, Alex, and Frankie, and Jake, and Leon, hopefully next week. And once again, thank you so much for watching. And leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. You know the gist.